And we are live again. Once again, thank you for coming to Portage County Free World's podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I'm alone today. I don't have any guests because the topic that I'm going to talk about is sort of sensitive, and I couldn't find anybody who wanted to delve in on it because I'm going to probably strike some notes with people. It's a little controversial, but if you're patient and you stick with me, I think maybe you'll find, or maybe you'll see some of my point. So that's what I'm hoping for. The topic today is alcoholism a disease? So I'll just start with that. Is alcoholism a disease? No, and fuck no. Alcoholism is not a disease by any stretch of the scientific method. No scientist could create a definition for alcoholism and fit it into the criteria of what we as Westerns in our medical institutions consider a disease, because diseases have criteria. For example, the common cold is not a disease. It doesn't fit the criteria of what a disease is. Cancer is a disease. And so there's other examples, like chickenpox is not a disease. Alzheimer's definitely is a disease. But alcoholism is no more a disease than depression. So I've heard it argued that way, that yes, it is a mental disease, like depression is a mental disease, but depression's not a disease either. It doesn't fit the criteria. Some of the criteria, I won't go over all of it, is, let's see, for example, cause of death. So that's one criteria to have to be considered a disease. A cause of death. Alcoholism is not a cause of death. There's never been a coroner report ever where the cause of death, not a legitimate coroner report, unless it was a religious coroner or something like that, where the cause of death was alcoholism. Car accident could be a cause of death. Liver failure, yellow jaundice, wet brain. Oh, that's some coffee pot. All of these could be a cause of death. Alcoholism itself cannot be a cause of death. And because of the second criteria, number 2, it can't be diagnosed. You cannot go into a doctor's office and get a cotton swab and be diagnosed with alcoholism. You can't get a hair follicle test or a blood test. They can test you for alcohol, even alcohol poisoning, but they can't test you for alcoholism because alcoholism doesn't have any structured amount of drinks that you have to have a month or a week or a day to qualify you as an alcoholic. It can't be diagnosed medically. So that's the second thing that disqualifies it as a disease. It needs to be treatable and have some kind of proposal of a cure. Alcoholics Anonymous will, by the way, we're going to get to them in a minute, will tell you that there is no cure. So right then and there, they're in complete agreement that alcoholism disqualifies as a disease by just making that statement that there is no cure or proposed cure. There's never going to be one. It needs to be lifelong. Problem drinking can be lifelong. So I'll give them that one. But problem drinking is not alcoholism. Again, alcoholism has to be able to be diagnosed. You have to say it's 6 beers a day or 28 beers a week. And if you drink 24 beers a week, you're not an alcoholic. And if you drink, there has to be some criteria to be able to be diagnosed medically. And so since there isn't, it can't be, it doesn't qualify as a lifelong problem because it's not a disease in the first place. And then another thing is it has to have symptoms. Every disease has to have symptoms. Alcoholism doesn't really have symptoms because, again, alcoholism's not a disease. So it's just a a bullshit word, really. Invented back in the 1930s, I think. Yeah, early 1930s. By Alcoholics Anonymous, which I told you I'd get to. It's simply a religious-based cult designed to put the fear of God into you, and as well as you thinking that you're getting help, in order to get $1 from you in the basket as they pass it around the room, and then they want you to keep coming back because they want that $1 again. So it's a really smart program for them, but it's very immoral for anyone who's looking for medical attention for a biological problem. The big book is basically their Bible. The doctrine of Alcoholics Anonymous, the doctrine of the big book, mostly was plagiarized from Buckman back in the 1920s. I think even before that he was around. But he was a shyster. He came up with a 12-step program that he had sold off to entrepreneurs who wanted to sell God to people who were trying to fix an ailment or a problem that they had. And this had everything to do with being overweight, to gambling, sex addiction, and Dr. Bob and Bill W. back in Akron, here in Akron, Ohio, in the early 1930s, applied it to alcohol. And they called their book the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where the word alcoholism comes from. So alcoholism, to me, it is not a word. It's a religion. So it's a product of a religious cult. This isn't the scientific view of how you should treat a problem, a biological problem. You shouldn't force God on anyone or a higher power or spirituality to cure a disease. Cancer, if you went to your doctor and he said you're in your 3rd stage of cancer, and instead of chemotherapy, what I want you to do is give your will over to a higher power, and we'll see what happens from there. I think you'll be all right. I don't think you'd be all right with that. I wouldn't be all right with that. And I wouldn't give him my medical insurance card and say, here, charge me for what you just told me to do. I wouldn't even put $1 in his basket if he had it. It's not a treatment. It's not science. It's not the scientific method. So my point is that more doctors should treat biological conditions like a problem, and problem drinking with the scientific method, which is obviously what we do with everything else. We do it with nicotine. We do it with our erections. We do it with every problem that we have. Science is right there trying to figure out. They do it with heroin. There's Suboxone. There's methadone for people addicted to meth. There's really nothing out there for the biological condition of problem drinking. And our biggest reason is we all think it's a moral issue. We think it's a decision that we're making because we're depressed or we're trying to say fuck it to the world. But really it's a craving, like cigarettes are a craving. And you can get nervous, you can get shaky, and you can just say, like a smoker would say, I just need a cigarette right now. It's been an hour since I had my last one. I got to take a break. I need my cigarette right now. It is a craving. That's biological. That is not a moral issue. It's not an ethical issue. It's not a defect of character. That's a biological craving. And I think if we viewed problem drinking or addicted drinking, whatever you want to call it, the craving of drinking as a biological craving like hunger or like a craving for sex or a craving to, want a cigarette, then we would stop sending people to 3 AA meetings a week to go find Jesus or whatever it is. and we would start applying the scientific method to the problem. And I know that this is possible because I was hospitalized once. I was way over my limit, and I don't know what it is they gave me. I want to say it's benzodiazepine or something like that, but they gave me a shot of something, and within an hour, I was completely sober, and I didn't desire a drink of alcohol for days. And even after that, it was really easy for me to not even want one. Something like that should be available in a small, safe dosage over the counter at pharmacies and at grocery stores, instead of pamphlets, religious pamphlets, and AA and the Bible. It's really insulting for problem drinkers to have to call themselves an alcoholic, stand up and call themselves an alcoholic the first time they're in a meeting. Or are you in your first 30 days of recovery? Stand up. We all want to see your face, and you're welcome to be here. We're gonna do the best we can to help you. And then they start reading religious scripture to you. And then after the meeting, everyone stands up and says the Lord's Prayer, and you don't really feel like you're at a doctor's appointment. You don't really feel like anyone's addressing the problem with science. And that's what I think the biggest point of my podcast is here. No one I have ever met has a defect of character or a spiritual malady. Not that I know of. I don't even know what spirituality is. Don't care. But I don't think that I've ever met somebody with either one of those. I've never met an alcoholic, and I've been to probably 1,000 AA meetings because I don't see the world as a place where there are alcoholic people. I don't think. There are alcoholic drinks, not alcoholic people. I think calling someone an alcoholic is basically name calling, and it's disrespectful, and it's dodging the problem. And I think medical science is dodging the problem when they send you to a 12-step clinic, and the 12-step clinic sends you to 3 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings a week. That's bullshit. And then you have to take those papers and bring them to the court or whatever the reason you were there in the first place. And it's very demeaning, and it's not helpful, because not a single person that I've ever known to go through those kinds of programs through the court system, 12-step clinics, recovery, I've been to all of that. I've been through all of that shit. Not anyone I've ever met has ever not gone back to drinking, because it didn't cure anything. It didn't fix their craving. It's like somebody who likes chocolate. You can go to a 12-step meeting for chocolate for a year. Once you've graduated, once you're done, you got all your paperwork signed, and they let you go, you're going to go buy some Hershey bars. That's what I would do if I love chocolate. I don't, but that's my point, is nobody cured you of the craving of that Hershey bar. You still want the chocolate. So all they did was made you pray and waste your time. And I think it's useless. And I think the money that's being made by Alcoholics Anonymous, if you think just here in Northeast Ohio, there's something like 250 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings a week, each with a roughly, let's average 50 people in the room, and each one of those people throwing $1 in the basket. Each one of those groups, 250 groups just in Northeast Ohio, is sending the money, basket money, up the pyramid, and all the way across the country. It's all going up the pyramid and ending up here in Akron, Ohio. And then Akron, Ohio distributes big books and stuff back down to the groups, but they're making their share of money, a lot of it. I don't know what their classification is, if they're a corporation or a 501c3. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I know they're making tons and tons of money. They're a huge group, and they're starting to become global just over the last few years, which is amazing to me, because I spent 3 years in Germany, and there was no such thing as alcoholism there. None. And they didn't want it. They didn't want people like AA over there. It was just weird to them. I'll close with this. I would like for the scientific community and the medical community to view problem drinking as something. If we know that withdrawal can be treated medically, we know that withdrawal is biological, hands down, objectively biological, then just back that train up a little bit and find out if the craving itself in the first place is biological. And I think they'll find that, yes, it is. It's not religious. It's not a spiritual malady. It's not something's wrong with your soul or your moral compass or you have a defective character. I don't think it's any of that. I think there is a physical craving. And if there could be a pill available over the counter at a reasonable, affordable price, well, then maybe we'd be better addressing the problem. Even if we don't get it in 5 years or 10 years, if we're working on it scientifically, then that is what I'm suggesting is going to help the world move past this problem. And that's not to make the whole world quit drinking at all. It's to make problem drinkers stop drinking or drink less. Drink like normal drinkers. Feel more normal. It's like telling an overeater never to eat again. That doesn't make any sense to anybody. If you like alcohol, by all means, drink alcohol. If you think you're drinking too much, you should stop. But I think there should be an aid to when we're feeling that way. We got to slow down. A pill that we just take, and it helps us to alleviate that craving. And I know there's such thing because of my experience at the hospital. They gave me something, and I didn't crave alcohol for days after that. So my point is that the meetings, the religious system, we got to phase them out. Let it erode away, and bring in the scientific method to problem drinking or addictive drinking, the craving of alcohol, whatever you want to call it. But let's start calling it for what it is. It's problem drinking. Let's stop calling it alcoholism because it's name calling and it's religious and it's condescending. And I think that we live in a scientific world now, where we can get past that. We can overcome that. And so with that, I think I'll end this podcast, and thanks for joining. Bye now.